today's learning targets are: I can determine whether or not a relationship is proportional. I can find and interpret the constant of proportionality. I can make an equation for a proportional relationship. So the question of the day is, how can we tell if two quantities are proportional to each other? And the answer is, each measure of the first quantity, which we call x, each measure of the first quantity multiplied by a constant number, which means multiplied by the same number, gives the corresponding measure in the second quantity, which we call y. So for example, you're going to be given tables with x values and y values. And I'm going to ask you if they're proportional. And you're going to figure out if they're proportional by seeing if all the x values were multiplied by the same number to get the y values. The number that they're multiplied by, the constant number, is known as a constant of proportionality, which we represent by the letter K. I know, random, right? It's not C because C is circumference. So we say it's K. Now this is what I mean, because this is kind of confusing, right? So here's what I mean. Let's pretend we have a relationship like this. 3, 7, 11. I just made up these numbers, okay? I can create a proportional relationship by picking a constant of proportionality to multiply all the x values by to get the y values. So let's pick a number. Let's do 4. So if my constant of proportionality is 4, then my y values are going to be 12, 28, and 44. And what I just did is I created a proportional relationship. Each measure in the first quantity multiplied by a constant number gives the corresponding measure in the second quantity. This constant number is known as the constant of proportionality, which we call K. So here, K is 4. And they're going to ask you to write equations for proportional relationships. And to do so, you're going to use this form, y equals kx. And all you have to do is plug in the number that you found to be k. So here, the number I multiplied x by was 4. So my equation's y equals kx. I plug in 4. My equation here is y equals 4x. All I did is plug in 4. Now let's say I gave you this table, but I didn't tell you what the constant of proportionality is. In order to find it out, you're going to need to do y divided by x. And one trick to remember that y is in the numerator is to think of this saying, you need to put y in the sky. In other words, the numerator is like the top of a fraction. So each time you divide to find out what this mystery number was, you're going to do y divided by x. So for example, here, to figure out what my constant proportionality was, I would do y divided by x. And each time I would get 4. And then I would be like, oh, the constant of proportionality is 4. So this is a lot to absorb. Let's do some example problems and it might make a little bit more sense. The following problems represent relationships that are proportional. Answer the questions below. A, find the constant of proportionality for this situation. So it looks like there's cans and tennis balls. To find the constant of proportionality, we do y divided by x. So let's look at my y values. My first y value is 9. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. Next, 15 divided by 5 is 3. Next, 21 divided by 7 is 3. And this is the work that you need to show. So what this work says is that to get from x to y, I multiplied by 3. Since it's the same number each time, this is a proportional relationship. The constant of proportionality is 3. Part B, Write an equation to represent this relationship. For proportional relationships, all of your equations are going to be in this form, y equals kx, and all you need to do is plug in the value you got for your constant of proportionality. In this case, it's 3. So I'm going to write y equals 3x. Now this next one is where most people make a mistake. This next one says minutes laps around a track. Find the constant proportionality. And people look at these numbers and they think, oh, it's just 4, which is wrong. So let's talk about y. We need to do y divided by x. So we have 2 divided by 8, which is a fourth. 3 divided by 12, which is a fourth. And 4 divided by 16, which is a fourth. So the number we're multiplying by is not 4, because my y values are getting smaller. It's a fourth. You're multiplying by a fourth. So the constant of proportionality is a fourth. And the equation, which needs to be in the form y equals kx for proportional relationships, the equation here will be y equals 1/4 x. Okay, next page. Alex buys 15 folders for $5. Consider the cost per folder. Now this is asking you to divide in a certain order. It wants you to put the cost over the folder. So the cost here is $5 for 15 folders, and if I simplify that, I get a third. So the constant of proportionality is a third, and my equation for this relationship is y equals 1/3 x. A chipmunk's heart will beat approximately 1,200 beats in 3 minutes. Consider the amount of beats per minute. It's telling you the order it wants you to divide. Beats per minute. 1,200 beats per 3 minutes is 400 beats. So the constant of proportionality here is 400, and the equation here would be y equals 400x. A sloth moves approximately 30 centimeters per minute. Consider the amount of centimeters the sloth moves per second. Centimeters per second. So that means that I'm going to do centimeters over seconds. 30 centimeters per minute means 30 centimeters per 60 seconds, which is a half. So the constant of proportionality here is a half, and the equation is y equals 1/2 x. Roman does 15 math problems in 60 minutes. Consider the amount of problems he finishes each minute. That means I want to do problems over minutes. He solves 15 problems in 60 minutes. The constant of proportionality is a fourth. So k equals 1/4 and y equals 1/4 x. Given the equation, determine the constant of proportionality. Now, whenever you're given an equation of a proportional relationship, it's going to be in the form of y equals kx. So you need to find out which number is being multiplied by x. So here, the constant proportionality is 3. Here, the constant proportionality is 1. Oops, sorry. I'm rushing. Here, the constant of proportionality is 0.25. And I found these answers just by looking at what number is being multiplied by x. Now the ones below are a little bit more difficult, but they're still pretty easy. If you think about this as y equals 1x over 2. The constant of proportionality here is a half. This next one, if you put a 1 here, this is really y equals 1x over 3. The constant of proportionality is a third. And here, y equals 3/4 x.